Well, shoot.
Okay, so let me start, Jim. Could you please try to describe your mathematical career to us and the transition into finance? How and why did it happen?
Okay, so he asked me about my career in mathematics and how that transitioned into making some money, making a lot of money. Well, I was a mathematician. I wrote a pretty good thesis. My thesis advisor said, that's too tough a problem, don't do it. That only made me want to do it, and I did. And it came out quite nice. It was printed in the annals. And from there, I went to MIT to be a Moore instructor. But at the time, I had done something else. I had made a small investment with my Colombian friends. I had some friends in Colombia. And I urged them to get together and make a business, which they did. And I had 10% of it that I had borrowed from my family and my father. So after a year at MIT as an instructor, I was an assistant professor at Harvard for a couple of years, but I wasn't making very much money, and I owed this money. So there's a place in Princeton called the Institute for Defense Analyses, which is a highly classified government operation designed to crack Russian codes, if you could. And they hired mathematicians, and they paid very well, and they hired me, and I liked the work, and I liked the work. At one point, near the end of my stay there, I solved an outstanding problem in that curious field, for which a special purpose computer was built in the National Security Agency. And as far as I know, that computer is still running to implement my little algorithm. From there, I left there, and but while I was there, I worked on something called minimal varieties. Minimal varieties are manifolds inside other manifolds whose with boundary, and the boundary spanning the boundary is a surface or a higher dimensional surface, and it's minimal with respect to anything else that spans that boundary. So, for example, if you take a wire frame, dip it in soap bubbles, pull it out, you'll get this beautiful film that's attached to that boundary, and that film has less area than any other thing that would span that boundary. So that's called a minimal surface. Jesse Douglas won the first Fields Medal, I think in 2005, by showing that, yes, you could always do this with any frame, and it would always be a smooth surface. And it was called the plateau problem, after a guy named Plateau, actually, it wasn't. So that got me interested in that field in higher dimensions. And so while I was at the Institute for Advanced Study, I worked very hard on that area, showed that up through dimension 7, you could always, ambient dimension 7, you could always have, if you had a boundary of dimension 5, you could always fill it in with a minimal variety of dimension 6. So that was nice. But the proof didn't work one dimension up. It just didn't work. And I found what I thought was a counterexample. It was the 3-sphere crossed itself in 8-dimensional space. So that made a 6-dimensional boundary in 8-dimensional space. And then I just connected it to the origin. So it was like a cone, and showed that that cone was minimal. It wasn't smooth at all. It had this point, which the lower dimensional ones didn't. And so I put up that as a counterexample, but I couldn't prove it was. But a few years later, a guy named Bombieri, 3 Italians showed that it was actually a counterexample. So that was a very good piece of work. I was very pleased by it. But I left the institute and went to Stony Brook at 30 years old to head their math department. And it was not a strong department, Stony Brook, but the physics department was terrific. And while I was there, I was hiring a lot of people. We had a lot of money and to build up the department. But I also got interested in another aspect of mathematics, and I won't go into the details, but I came up with quite a beautiful construction on a closed 3-dimensional Riemannian manifold. A closed manifold, Riemannian means it has a metric, and I came up with some invariant of that. It was actually a conformal invariant. And it had various properties. I was very pleased with it. I showed it to Chern. How many of you in the audience have heard of Chern? Okay, that's a reasonable number. He was the great man in differential geometry, and he was a friend of mine, and I showed him this work. And he said, "Oh, you did it in 3 dimensions, but it should be doable in all dimensions." Oh, okay. I was dubious, but we worked together, and it did. So we published the paper, and about 5 years later, I think it was Witten in Princeton, he was a physicist, started using that math. And then other physicists used that math. And it just shows you don't know, you do a piece of work and you don't really know where it's going to end up, what it's going to lead to. Because all kinds of physicists in every area almost seem to use what's called Chern-Simons to do their physics. So every day, on average, 4 papers are published in the physics archives. 4 papers are published on average talking about Chern-Simons. So I was, I've been dumbfounded at that outcome, but there it was. So that was the math part. Now you wanted to know the money part.
Yes, please.
Well, the money part. Well, as I said, I had invested with my Colombian friends. The business got sold, and I had a fair amount of money. And this was while I was still at Stony Brook. And so it seemed interesting to invest that money, actually to trade it. And so I traded currencies, foreign currencies, with this little bit of money I had, and I did pretty well. I did pretty well. And And at a certain point, I decided to leave academia. I hired a few people to get into the investment activity with me. We were trading commodities of all sorts, and the firm grew and grew and grew and grew until we had about 300 people working for us. This fund has been the most successful hedge fund ever in terms of its returns, annual returns. And I ran that company, that fund, until about 10 years ago, when I stepped down to go into my third career, which was, we had a foundation that Marilyn had started, and Marilyn, my wife, we had started a foundation. It was focusing on science, and I joined up with the foundation and spent my time there, and I have done so for the last 10 years. So that's, the money story.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm here as a financier because Jim, in a way, reinvented finance and changed the way people invest around the world, and started and innovated the thing which is now called Quant investing, which is applying math and sciences to making returns.
Yeah, we certainly used a lot of math.
Yeah.
in trading.
And what is it with financial markets which makes it such a fertile ground for math and sciences?
Well, I mean,
yeah, what is it? What are the characteristics? Why are financial markets such a fertile ground for, the application of math and sciences?
well, I mean, think of a stock. It's a time series. It has a value every day. It goes up, it goes down. It has a time series. You can analyze time series mathematically, and especially if you have hundreds or thousands of these time series, you can compare them and so on. It's very a good area to analyze data. So I don't know how many people were doing it at the time. I think not very many. More people are doing it today, but we seem to manage to stay ahead of everybody. But nonetheless, it's a natural, it's a natural area to do some statistics and so forth. We hire statisticians, physicists, astronomers, mathematicians. The important thing is that they were very smart, in many cases. Smarter than me, but so much the better. So we built a terrific team.
Is it true that you never hired people from the investment industry?
Never. I like to say that you can teach a physicist finance, but you can't teach a finance person physics. And no, we didn't. They came on, they got a good education in the field, and that man went to town.
To what extent is data now becoming commoditized, and to which extent are you relying on your own proprietary data? How do you look at these things?
Proprietary data?
Yeah, that only Renaissance has got.
Oh, I don't know if we have. I mean, stock data and so on is open to the public. I don't think we have any. We have a tremendous amount of it. Tick by tick even. So maybe not everyone would bother doing tick by tick, but we do. So what was the question?
Just if you could just explain on the type of data that you would use in your analysis. So one thing is share price. What are the other type of things that goes into it?
Well, it's pretty much just the time series of the prices of the stocks. Or we also trade commodities. In fact, that's what we started. We first traded commodities. It was hard to get a good system for stocks, but finally we did, and that changed a lot because there are a lot more stocks than there are commodities. So, but I don't know what data people are collecting, but it's out there to the public. There's no reason you can't collect tick data or any. Tick data means every time a price changes, which is every maybe 10 seconds or something like that, or minutes, that's a tick. So you collect those tick series.
Which areas of mathematics have you found most useful in finance? And are there other new areas that you think will enter soon?
Yeah, that's a good question. But there isn't a very good answer. There isn't a very good answer. We wanted smart scientists and some, as I said, we had some astronomers, we had some physicists, we had some mathematics people. They would learn the business. So, did I answer your question?
Yes, but also do you expect new areas of currently useless mathematics to enter finance in the near future?
Well, there's machine learning, which is coming along, and I believe that that will be useful. And yeah, as these various fields grow or change, you never know whether some of those changes would be helpful. The people we hire, of course, are right up to date on what's going on in their own field, scientific field. So, well, that's it.
In the longer term, do you think there'll be a place still for fundamental investing?
Yes. I think there'll always be a place for fundamental investing. It's a different way of doing things. It's the classical way of doing things. And it's perfectly reasonable to, let's say, study a company deeply and analyze their management and, you know, study this. I say, this is a good company, I'm going to invest in it. But we don't do that at all. So that kind of investing, you know, Warren Buffett kind of investing, I think always will have a place.
Sometimes you mention that you have a few principles that you follow in your work. And I remember you saying what the first one is never follow the pack. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, actually, that's not the first one.
Oh, okay.
I have 5. I try to remember them. I'm glad my wife is in the audience. She remembers my principles when if I forget them. We went to a talk that I was giving at MIT about 20 years ago, and she was in the car with me, and she said, what are you going to talk about? And I told her, and she says, well, you should, you know, give some of your principles. And I said, I don't know if I have any principles, but I decided I actually did. And okay, so the first one actually is be guided by beauty. Be guided by beauty. Just as a great theorem, it can be very beautiful, a very, very well company that's really working on all things very, very efficiently. That can be beautiful. So be guided by beauty. Surround yourself by the smartest and best people you possibly can have, and let them do their thing. Don't sit on top of them. And if they're smarter than you, all the better. So surround yourself with wonderful people. That's 2. Let's see. Oh yeah, okay. Don't run with the pack. That's one of my, if everyone is trying to solve the same problem, or a whole group of people, if that's the latest and greatest thing to do, don't do that. I'm not the fastest, I'm not the fastest runner, I'm not the fastest thinker, and I'm a pretty good thinker, but I'm not so fast. So do something original, don't follow the pack. Don't give up easily. Stick with it. Stick with it. Not forever, but really give it a chance to get where you're going. And the final principle is hope for good luck. That's the most important principle.
Well, in the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, we are always hoping for good luck. But as you can see, we have a lot of very intelligent mathematicians in the country. Do you think there is a place for quant investing in the Sovereign Wealth Fund?
In the what fund?
In the Sovereign Wealth Fund, in the big oil fund.
Yeah. Well, Norway has a huge amount of money to manage, $1.25 trillion or something like that, and it's managed classically, I suppose.
Yep.
And you're involved in that. Is that not correct?
Yeah. I work there.
Okay, so if you wanted to try a little quant trading and bring in some people with that kind of background, it wouldn't be the stupidest thing in the world. It would be another, leg in the stool. So there are quite a number of, I'm saying this because there are quite a number of quant funds already out there besides Renaissance and the Medallion Fund. So I'm not worried that you'll steal all our secrets or discover all our secrets. But it wouldn't be a bad thing for you to do that. Maybe there's someone out there in this mathematical audience who might want to get into finance.
Yeah.
Back to, you mentioned how important hiring the right people is. So when you worked in Renaissance, what would a typical hiring interview look like?
That's a good question. Well, they're interviewed, and if they're scientists, because we hire other people, none of them is a scientist, but in particular the interviews with scientists, they're put through their paces. They're asked to solve some problems right on the board and stuff like that. I'm not so keen on that method, although I was the boss, but the guys under me thought that was good, and I let that go. And once in a while, I overrode, in particular, one case. They said, no, this guy, he's too slow. He's not. I said, I don't know. I like him. I'm going to call his thesis advisor. He had just gotten a PhD. So I called his thesis advisor at Harvard, and I said, tell me about this guy. He said, oh, he's terrific. He solved the hardest problem I had. I said, thank you very much. And we hired him, and he's been extremely good. So how fast you are on your feet is not necessarily an indication of how well you do or how smart you are or whatever. But we we're pretty good at hiring people. Very good, actually. One way or another, we've hired.
Short edition. Have you ever tried to hire Dennis?
Dennis? Let me see, did I ever try to hire Dennis?
Okay.
No, I never tried to hire.
Okay.
It never occurred to me that he, that he would want to do that.
When you tried to hire him for study group, when you were there, right?
What did he say?
He tried to hire.
To hire Dennis to study group.
Oh, sure, I tried to hire Dennis at Stony Brook.
Because of that, you didn't try again.
What did he say?
I didn't get it.
You didn't manage to hire him to study group, so you didn't.
Oh, yeah, so, okay, so he'd be nearby the business, which is run in Stony Brook. Sure, I tried to hire Dennis when I was when I was chairman. He came to give a talk or whatever, and with his girlfriend, and his girlfriend had just graduated Berkeley, and she wanted to be a graduate student in math. She was okay. So I said, sure, you can be a graduate student right here, thinking that that would be an anchor for Dennis. But I was wrong. It wasn't an anchor, and he went to MIT instead, and I think he was pretty happy at MIT. But well, now he's mostly at Stony Brook, and I think he's very happy. Yeah.
So Jim, you now have, so let's say now you hired 80 or 100 PhD students. How do you get from that to actually making money? How does the creative process work, and how do you how do you come up with your investment strategies and the signals? How does this process work like?
Well, in the first place, it's going to cost you money because you're going to have to pay their salaries, and they're not going to bring in a cent. But well, you don't want to bring in 100 people. You want to bring in 5 or 10, maybe 5. Let them get the hang of it, and so on, and then they can expand their group. I wouldn't hire 100 people immediately, but find someone you like, a few people you like, and who are interested in finance, but maybe aren't, and who are mathematicians or physicists or something like that. We're at a university here, and I'm sure it's a good one, and maybe there are some junior faculty or graduate students just getting their degrees who think they might like to be in finance. And you'll find some people.
And when you had them working with you, you were meeting. Was it once a week, and you discussed ideas and brainstormed? How did that work?
Well, I think it still works that way. Well, first of all, there are groups and group leaders, and in somewhat different areas, but everybody knows what everybody else is doing. So once a week, there's a meeting of all the scientists, and they tell each other what they're up to. Frequently, someone has a new predictive signal, and he presents it, and it's discussed. Then if people have their doubts, well, they always have their doubts. There's a small meeting, and it's tested out thoroughly, and sometimes it just doesn't make it. Other times it does. But the important thing is that everybody knows what everyone else is doing, and they can help the other person, even if it's from a different group. So other places that I know of have groups, all right, but they each have their own little system, and they get paid in accordance with how their little system does. And they don't let anyone else know their system. But I don't think that's a good way to work. And well, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
You mentioned the importance of good luck.
Well,
And isn't it so that luck seems to favor the prepared mind? What do you think of that?
I think that is true to some extent, yes. But if you call it luck, then, and when Dennis proves a theorem, he's very prepared. So he doesn't, I don't think, say, oh, it's lucky. When I say luck, I really mean luck. And I'm writing my memoirs, or trying to, and the title is Mathematics, Common Sense, and Good Luck. And that's not a bad title. Well, okay. So, who asked me about luck?
I asked you about good luck, yes.
Okay.
No, okay, that answers the question, yes.
Okay.
Nicolai?
Before we, maybe we want to open up for questions at some stage here as well.
Maybe two more?
Two more.
Yeah.
Love to hear about how you apply your rigor and analysis to your philanthropic efforts.
Well, that's a very good question. As I said, our philanthropy, our foundation, is mostly science. And so how do you, and we give grants. So, well, how do you decide who give a grant to, you know? So we have 3 units, math and physical science, life science, and we put a lot of effort into, this is on the grant giving side, because I'll tell you something else before. And we also have quite an effort on autism research, on which we're making some progress. So what we want is the people in these leadership positions to be very good scientists. One of them is here right now. Yuri, raise your hand. Where is he?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, there's Yuri. Okay, Yuri's a terrific mathematician at the Quran Institute, but half-time with us. And he has a terrific person on the side with him who works, I think only 1 day a week, but it's tremendously productive. He's a physicist, a very well-known physicist, and a little team of people. So they have very good tastes because they know the field well. On the biology side, we have a woman named Marion Carlson, who's wonderful. She's a member of the National Academy, and she directs things for in life sciences. And then I told you we had the autism. But a number of years ago, we decided we could do some science in-house. And we started with one group. So we started with, we wanted to do computational science. I didn't want any labs in-house because labs are expensive and a mess and so on. So I wanted computational science. And we hired a fellow named Leslie Greengard, who's quite well known and an excellent applied mathematician, and he also happens to have an MD. He got a medical degree. And he brought in a number of people, and they were doing great things. And he built this up to maybe 30 people, maybe even 35 or so. And then we generalized it. It was working so well, we generalized it. So the next unit was astrophysics. And we hired an outstanding astrophysicist to run this group, and he came in, and then the third was quantum physics, which is very different from astrophysics, and we hired a wonderful Frenchman named Antoine Georges, who we had dinner with, Marilyn and I, a couple of days ago in Paris. So he's half-time, and he shares that with a guy in-house, and quantum physics is going great. That's the third one. We had room for one more unit. We debated between neuroscience and mathematics. Now, computational mathematics sounds a little bit redundant, but it really wasn't. And so we tilted towards computational mathematics, and we did that, and that filled up the building that we had. We had taken a building, it was about 55 people on the floor, or no, in a unit, and it's a beautiful building, actually. And, but we did have some room in our main building, because some tenants were moving out and we took it over. So we did have enough space for neuroscience, and everyone was very keen on neuroscience. So now we have computational neuroscience. It's been going for a year. It'll build up for the next 3 or 4 years. So we do a lot of research in-house as opposed to grant making. That whole operation costs about $100 million a year, I think. It'll get a little bit more with neuroscience. So does that answer your question?
Yeah.
No, I think that all the work that you and philanthropic work that you and your wife are doing is extremely important, and we should thank you all for that. But maybe now we should have open up for some questions.
Well, just let me ask a question of the audience. How many of you have read Quant magazine? A lot of hands. It's a great magazine. That comes, of course, out of our foundation. It was Marilyn, my wife's, doing that we had Quanta. The only contribution I made was the name, and its readership just keeps growing and growing. So we're very proud of Quanta magazine. Okay.
Yeah, please.
Questions?
Thank you very much. We don't have time for many questions, but maybe it's one or two.
Well, there's someone.
Hi. Yes. And first of all, I would like to thank you, particularly because...
I'm sorry, you need to speak. You need to speak up.
You need a
We can't hear you.
microphone.
You need a microphone. I can't
Yes,
hear
she
you.
has a microphone. Yeah.
Ja, den funkar den.
So first of all, I would like to thank you for your philanthropic work, particularly on behalf of the Committee of Developing Countries of the European Mathematical Society, who is benefiting directly on some project for Africa, development of mathematics there. And that was very successful.
Well, that's a long question, and I really didn't understand what you
No,
It's
I don't
not a
think- I think the
question,
question is
it was just a thank you. But the question comes now, and this is about how to make the economy and the, if you want, capital market more sustainable. Is there any direction, or what are your thoughts about this?
Do you think there is a way to make markets and the economy more sustainable?
And to make markets and the
And the economy
itself.
more sustainable generally?
Well, no. I don't know of any way to make the markets or the economy. I like to see the economy grow, new businesses flourish, new ideas come into the world. But I don't have any magic wand or any idea of what I could do about, or anyone could do about that.
My understanding is that your Quant fund makes the market more efficient.
I'm sorry, once again?
Yeah, the Quant funds make the markets more efficient. And do you think these efficiencies will become, the market will become more and more efficient, so it will be more and more challenging for Quant funds to succeed?
You're asking?
Yeah. Is the market generally becoming more and more efficient, making it more difficult for you guys to make money?
Yeah, there are a number of quant funds which have grown over the years. They compete with us. I mean, they don't see what we're doing, and we don't see what they're doing. But so I think the quant funds may have made the markets somewhat more efficient. I can't be sure of that. But of course, the way you make money in this is find anomalies that are some minor anomaly that has continued, and it's usually very small, but it's there. And if you have enough of these anomalies, you'll build up something. So, but I don't really think that the markets are very much more efficient.
Okay.
Hello, Jim. You emphasized mathematics a lot in Renaissance success, but I wonder what type of role did the computer have throughout Renaissance success, and how did that role evolve during the computer's technology improvement? So my question is about computers in Renaissance, and how much have you used them over time?
Well, we have a very large computer facility, and we have a number of people on the staff who are computer people, not scientists per se. They're programmers, and they work with the science staff and so on. So that's it's extremely important. We have a lot of computers, and we're building more at this very moment.
Could it be done without computers?
No. No.
What kind of power? What kind of computer power does it take?
I don't remember, and I don't think I ever knew how many cores we have, but we have an awful lot of them. As we do in the Flatiron Institute that I was just talking about. There's a huge computer facility there and at Renaissance. So we couldn't do that without computers.
You said you started out with currencies, trading currencies with the money you'd earned from academics. And I was wondering how you were doing analytics when you first started. Were you looking at the you hear me? Yeah? Yeah. Go ahead.
I couldn't really understand you.
No, just continue.
So when you started trading currencies when you went from academics to finance, and you started for yourself with your own money invested in or traded currencies, and how would you analyze the currencies when you first started?
Are you asking why I started with trading currencies?
With currencies, what type of analysis and what type of strategies did you use in the currency markets?
Nothing technical at all. It was not a quant approach. I didn't develop any. At first, it was just I. Or was it just me? Anyway, it was it was just me. And I read the papers, the newspapers. I tried to get a sense of where the major currencies might be going, and I was not bad at it. So I hired a few other people, but it was fundamental trading. It was not technical at all.